"That's my daddy." The boy's finger pointed at the oil painting. His voice, small, confused, trembling, cut through the mansion's silence like a gunshot. Katherine Ashford froze. The expensive scotch in her hand suddenly felt like ice. Her eyes moved from the scruffy kid in her entrance hall to the portrait on her wall, then back again. "You're... what?" "My daddy, Thomas Wright." The boy's voice got stronger, more insistent. "Why do you have a painting of my daddy in your house?" The glass slipped. Katherine watched it fall in slow motion, tumbling through air, catching light from the chandelier, exploding against marble in a spray of crystal and amber liquid. The sound should have made her jump. It didn't. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe, because that name, that face, that impossible, devastating truth standing in worn sneakers and a faded jacket, staring at her with eyes that held questions she couldn't answer. Thomas Wright was supposed to be dead. She'd buried him 12 years ago. Hey, beautiful souls, welcome to Vicky Tale. If this is your first time here, you just stumbled into something special. And to my Day One subscribers who show up every single week, I see you. I appreciate you. You have no idea how much you mean to me. Now let's get into this story, because what you're about to hear is absolutely wild. A 12-year-old boy selling handmade wooden crafts to save his dying father walks into a billionaire's mansion and sees something that breaks his entire reality in half. But here's the thing. If you want to find out why this woman had his father's portrait, if you want to understand the secret that destroyed 3 lives, you need to hit that subscribe button right now. I'm serious, this story is going to take you on a journey and you don't want to miss a single second. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and let's go. Micah's thumbs were bleeding. Not badly, just small nicks and cuts from where the carving knife had slipped, where splinters had dug in, where his hands had cramped from gripping tools for too long. He'd wrapped band-aids around the worst spots, but they kept coming loose as he worked. 17 doors, 17 rejections. The canvas bag slung over his shoulder held what was left of his inventory. 8 wooden keychains carved into different shapes, hearts, stars, crosses. 5 bookmarks with intricate designs burned into the wood. 3 small jewelry boxes with hand-carved lids. Each piece had taken hours to make, his father guiding him through the process before he got too sick to hold the tools himself. "Measure twice, cut once," Thomas would say, his large hands steadying Micah's smaller ones. "The wood will tell you what it wants to be. You just have to listen." Micah had listened, had spent every evening after school in their tiny garage, sawdust covering everything, the smell of wood and varnish becoming as familiar as home. Had learned to sand until his arms ached, to carve with patience he didn't know he had, to transform rough planks into something beautiful. Not because he loved woodworking, though he was starting to, but because the medical bills kept coming and his father kept getting sicker, and someone had to do something. The sun was sinking behind the mansions of Millionaires Row, painting everything in shades of gold that would have been beautiful if Micah wasn't so bone-tired. His feet hurt, his shoulders ached from the weight of the bag. His hands throbbed. He'd made $62 today, $62 toward the $3,000 they needed. It felt like trying to empty the ocean with a teaspoon. Micah stopped at the corner of Ashford Lane, ready to call it quits. Ready to go home and tell his father that he'd really tried, but it wasn't enough. It would never be enough. Then he remembered this morning. His father collapsed in the garage, the carving knife clattering from his hand, his breath coming in wheezes that sounded like drowning. Micah had helped him to bed, watched him curl up under the thin blanket, watched him try to hide how scared he was. "I'm fine, kiddo," Thomas had whispered, but his lips had a blue tinge that made Micah's stomach drop. "Just need to rest." But rest wasn't fixing this. Rest wasn't going to make the pneumonia, or whatever it was, go away. Only real doctors with real medicine could do that, and real doctors cost money they didn't have. So Micah turned down Ashford Lane instead of going home. The mansions here were different, bigger, more isolated, set back behind gates that looked like they were designed to keep out everyone who didn't belong, which definitely included 12-year-old boys selling hand-carved wooden crafts. The Ashford estate sat at the very end, and Micah almost walked past it because it looked more like a museum than a home. white stone that glowed in the fading light, windows 3 stories tall, gardens that probably had their own full-time staff, a fountain with actual marble angels in the circular driveway. These people didn't need wooden keychains, they probably had keychains made of gold. But Micah had come this far, and something, stubbornness, desperation, maybe just the way the evening light hit the windows, made him stop at the gate and press the intercom button. Static crackled, then silence stretched so long Micah thought no one would answer. Then, "Yes?" A woman's voice, professional but not cold, curious maybe. Micah swallowed hard and launched into his pitch. He'd given it so many times today it should have been automatic, but his throat still got tight with embarrassment every time. "Hi, my name is Micah. I'm selling hand-carved wooden items, keychains, bookmarks, jewelry boxes, all handmade by me and my dad. I'm trying to raise money for his medical expenses because he's really sick and we can't afford the tests he needs. Would you be interested in looking at what I have?" The silence that followed made Micah's heart sink. Here came the rejection. The "we're not interested" or the "we don't buy" from solicitors, or just the click of the intercom going dead. But instead the voice said, "Hand-carved. You made these yourself?" "Yes, ma'am." "Well, my dad taught me how. He used to do woodworking professionally before he got sick. Now I do most of it, but they're his designs." "How old are you?" 12, ma'am." A longer pause. Micah could almost hear the woman thinking, weighing whether this was legitimate or some kind of scam. "What kind of items do you have?" Hope flared in Micah's chest. Keychains in different shapes, bookmarks with burned designs. "Small jewelry boxes. I can show you if—" "Wait there. I'm coming down." The intercom went silent. Micah's hands started trembling. After 17 rejections, someone was actually interested. Someone was actually going to look at his work. Maybe today wouldn't be a complete failure after all. 3 minutes later, a woman appeared walking down the long driveway. She was younger than Micah expected, mid-30s maybe, wearing dark jeans and a cream-colored sweater that probably cost more than Micah's entire wardrobe combined. Her hair was pulled back in a sleek ponytail, and she moved with the kind of easy confidence that came from never having to worry about money. She reached the gate and studied him through the iron bars. Her eyes were intelligent, assessing but not unkind. "Show me." Micah pulled items from his bag one at a time, holding them up so she could see through the gate. A keychain shaped like a cross with tiny details carved into the wood. A bookmark with an intricate tree design burned into the surface. A small box with a rose carved on the lid. The woman's expression changed as she examined each piece. The professional assessment shifted into something else. Surprise, maybe, or appreciation. "These are beautiful," she said, and she sounded like she meant it. "Really beautiful. Your father taught you this?" "Yes, ma'am. He learned from his father. Said it's a family skill passed down." "What's your father's name?" "Thomas. Thomas Wright." The woman went very still. Her hand, which had been reaching toward her phone, froze halfway to her pocket. "Thomas Wright," she repeated slowly. "You're sure that's his name?" "Yes, ma'am." "Is something wrong?" For a moment, the woman didn't respond. She just stared at Micah with an expression he couldn't read. Then she blinked, seemed to shake herself out of whatever thought had grabbed her. "No, nothing wrong. Just, that's an interesting coincidence. I used to know someone with that name." Her voice had gone strange, distant. "A long time ago." She pulled out her phone and tapped something. The gate began to swing open with a quiet mechanical hum. "Come in," she said. "I want to see the rest of what you have, and I want to talk to you about your father." Every warning bell in Micah's head started ringing. Don't go into strangers' houses. Don't trust people just because they seem nice. His father had drilled those lessons into him since he could remember, but this woman knew his father's name, recognized it. And Micah needed money desperately enough to take the risk. He stepped through the gate. The walk up the driveway felt like entering a different universe. Everything was perfect in a way that felt almost artificial. Hedges trimmed into perfect geometric shapes. Flowers arranged by height and color in beds so neat they looked painted on. Stone pathways without a single crack or weed. Micah's worn sneakers, the ones with duct tape holding the sole together, felt criminal against all this perfection. "I'm Katherine," the woman said as they walked. "Katherine Ashford, this is my home." "It's really beautiful," Micah said, because what else could you say when faced with something this grand? "Thank you. It's taken years to build." Katherine glanced at him, her expression still holding that strange intensity. "Your father, Thomas, where does he live now?" "We have a house on Elm Street, other side of the city." "Elm Street." Katherine's voice was carefully neutral. "And what does he do? You said he used to do woodworking professionally." "He did. Now he mostly does repairs for people in our neighborhood when he's feeling well enough. Fixes things. He's really good with his hands." Micah's throat tightened. "Or he was before he got too sick to work." "I see." Katherine had picked up her pace, walking faster toward the mansion's entrance. "How long has he been ill?" "About 5 months. But it's gotten really bad in the last few weeks." They reached the front door, massive dark wood with iron fixtures that looked medieval. Katherine pushed it open and gestured for Micah to enter. "Come in." Micah stepped inside and his brain struggled to process what he was seeing. The entrance hall was bigger than his entire house. Marble floors stretched out in every direction, white with veins of gold running through them like frozen lightning. A chandelier hung from a ceiling so high Micah had to crane his neck back to see it, all crystal and gold, throwing rainbows across the walls. Paintings in heavy frames lined the walls, the kind you saw in museums behind velvet ropes. Furniture that looked too perfect to be real was arranged in groupings that probably had names like sitting areas and conversation nooks. This wasn't a home. This was a palace. "Don't worry about the floors," Katherine said, noticing him frozen in the doorway. "Come in. They're just floors. Just floors. Just marble and gold floors that probably cost more than everything Micah's family owned combined." Micah took a tentative step forward. His sneaker squeaked against the marble, too loud, too jarring in all this quiet luxury. He wanted to apologize for existing in this space. Katherine walked further into the hall, heading toward what looked like a living area near a massive stone fireplace. Micah followed, his eyes trying to take in everything at once. The art, the furniture, the sheer impossible wealth on display. "Let me see the rest of what you have," Katherine said, turning to face him. "I'm thinking I might want to place a larger order. These would make beautiful gifts, and I have several charitable events coming up where—" But she stopped mid-sentence because Micah wasn't listening anymore. His eyes had locked onto something on the wall beside the sweeping staircase. A portrait, slightly smaller than the other paintings, but somehow more noticeable. The frame was ornate gold, carved with details that caught the light. But it was the subject that made Micah's entire world tilt sideways. The man in the portrait was younger, his face fuller, his eyes brighter, his posture straighter. He wore a button-down shirt Micah had never seen, stood against a background Micah didn't recognize. But every line of that face was burned into Micah's memory. The strong jaw, the slightly crooked nose, the small scar through his left eyebrow from a childhood accident he'd told Micah about a dozen times. That was his father who never talked about his past, his father who always changed the subject when Micah asked about before. His father who sometimes got a haunted look in his eyes like he was remembering something painful. His father's portrait was hanging in this billionaire's mansion. Micah's bag slipped from his shoulder and hit the marble with a thud that echoed through the cavernous space. Wooden items scattered, a keychain skittering across the floor, a bookmark sliding to a stop near Katherine's feet. "Micah?" Katherine's voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. "Are you all right?" He couldn't speak. His hand came up slowly, pointing at the portrait with a finger that shook. Katherine followed his gaze. Micah heard her sharp intake of breath. "That painting," Micah said, and his voice didn't sound like his own voice. It sounded younger, scared. "That man in the painting?" "Yes." Katherine's tone had shifted, careful now, wary. "That's my daddy." The words came out simple, clear, impossible to misunderstand. "That's my daddy. Why is my daddy's picture in your mansion?" The silence that followed felt like the world had stopped spinning. Catherine's face went through a rapid series of changes, confusion melting into shock, shock hardening into something Micah couldn't identify. Her eyes moved from Micah to the portrait, back to Micah, back to the portrait. Her mouth opened, closed. No sound came out. The crystal tumbler in her hand, when had she picked that up? Simply dropped. Her fingers went loose, her grip failed, and the glass fell. Crash. Crystal shattered against marble. Expensive scotch splashed across the pristine white floor in an amber spray. Ice cubes scattered, sliding in different directions. But Katherine didn't look down, didn't acknowledge the destruction. She just stared at the portrait like it might vanish if she blinked. "What did you say?" Her voice came out hoarse, stripped raw. "I said that's my daddy, Thomas Wright." Fear was being replaced by something else now in Micah's chest. Anger, maybe, or desperation for answers. "You asked me his name, and I told you, and now I'm seeing his picture on your wall, and I need you to tell me right now why you have this. How do you know my father?" Katherine took a step toward the painting, then another. Her expensive shoes crunched through broken glass, crunch, crunch, crunch. But she didn't seem to notice or care. She stopped directly beneath the portrait and raised one trembling hand toward it, her fingers hovering inches from the canvas like she was afraid to actually touch it. "Thomas," she whispered, and the name came out like a prayer, like mourning, like something breaking open after being held together too long. She spun to face Micah so suddenly he took an instinctive step backward. "That man," Katherine said, and her voice was rising now, getting louder and sharper with each word. "That man in this painting died 12 years ago. Do you understand me? He died. Car accident on Highway 49. They found his vehicle at the bottom of Miller's Ravine, burned so badly the metal melted. The police searched for his body for 3 weeks. They dragged the river. They brought in cadaver dogs. They never found him because the current was too strong. The river washed everything away." Tears were streaming down her face now, cutting tracks through makeup that had probably taken an hour to apply. "We had a memorial service," Katherine continued, her voice breaking. "I stood in front of 200 people and gave a eulogy for a man whose body we couldn't bury. I mourned him. For 12 years, I have mourned him every single day. So you need to tell me right now, who is the man you're calling your father? Because Thomas Wright is dead. He has to be dead. Because if he's not dead, then everything I've believed, everything I've grieved, everything I've built my life around is a lie." "My father is alive," Micah said, his own voice getting stronger to match hers. "He's at home right now. He's sick and he's dying, but he is alive. And that..." He pointed at the portrait again, with a hand that wouldn't stop shaking. "That is him. Same face, same nose, same scar through his eyebrow from when he fell out of a tree when he was 8 years old. That is my father. So you need to tell me why you have his picture. How did you know him? Why did you think he was dead? What is going on?" Katherine stared at him. Her chest was heaving like she'd been running. Then she did something completely unexpected. She laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. It was the kind of laugh that came from the edge of sanity. The sound someone made when reality stopped making any kind of sense whatsoever. "How did I know him?" Katherine's laugh dissolved into something closer to a sob. "How did I know him?" She moved to a mahogany cabinet beside the fireplace and yanked open a drawer with such force that the whole cabinet shook. Her hands were trembling so badly she knocked things over, papers scattering, pens rolling, a small clock tipping over with a crash. Finally, she found what she was looking for and pulled out a leather-bound book, a photo album, old and well-worn. Katherine flipped it open with sharp, angry movements, found a page, turned the album around so Micah could see. The photograph showed a younger Katherine, maybe 22 or 23, standing next to the man from the portrait. They were in front of a tiny apartment building, peeling paint visible on the walls behind them. His arm was around her shoulders. She was laughing at something off-camera. Both of them looked happy in a way that seemed almost foreign in this formal mansion, like happiness was something that belonged to a different version of them. "That's how I knew him," Katherine said, her voice hollow now, empty. "We met when we were in college. I was studying computer science at State. He was in engineering. We were both broke, both working multiple jobs to pay tuition, both so tired we could barely see straight. We met in the library at 2 in the morning during finals week. I was crying over a programming assignment I couldn't figure out. He brought me coffee and helped me debug my code. She flipped to another page, more photos. Thomas and Katherine at a coffee shop, studying together. At a park, having a picnic. At what looked like a graduation ceremony, both of them in caps and gowns, laughing. We were together for 3 years, Katherine continued. We weren't just dating, we were partners. We had plans, big plans. We were going to start a tech company together. We were going to change the world. We stayed up until 3 in the morning, brainstorming ideas, writing business plans, dreaming about what we could build. We were going to get married after we got the company off the ground. We had it all figured out. She turned another page, a photo of Thomas looking at Katherine like she was the only person in the world. A photo of them moving into an apartment together, boxes stacked everywhere. A photo of Christmas, both of them wearing ugly sweaters and grinning like idiots. We were happy, Katherine whispered. We were so happy. And then, she closed the album with a snap that sounded too loud in the quiet hall. And then one night, we had a fight, Katherine continued, her voice going flat, emotionless. Like she'd told this story so many times it had lost all feeling. The worst fight we'd ever had. About my mother, about money, about the future. He said things. I said things. Terrible things. Things we didn't mean, but said anyway because we were angry and scared and didn't know how to fix what was breaking between us. She looked up at Micah, and the pain in her eyes was so raw it hurt to see. He left that night, walked out angry. I thought he just needed space to cool down. I thought he'd come back in the morning and we'd apologize and figure it out like we always did. But he didn't come back. He didn't answer his phone. I went to his job site the next day and they said he'd called in sick. I went to our apartment and all his things were still there, but he wasn't. Katherine's hands clenched into fists at her sides. 2 weeks later, she said, police showed up at my door. They said they'd found Thomas's truck at the bottom of Miller's Ravine. Said it looked like he'd lost control on a mountain curve, gone through the guardrail, crashed 100 feet down into the rocks. The vehicle was burned, electrical fire, they thought. They found his wallet in the wreckage, his work ID, his tools, his phone, melted beyond recognition. They said he'd died on impact. They said the river had probably washed his body downstream before they could get search teams down there. Tears were flowing freely now, dripping off Katherine's chin onto her expensive sweater. They said he was dead, she repeated, and I believed them. Because why wouldn't I? They had evidence, they had the crash site, they had his belongings. So I mourned him. I blamed myself for the fight, for the things I'd said, for not calling him back that night. I thought our last words to each other had been angry and cruel, and I would never, ever get the chance to take them back. She looked at Micah, and something shifted in her expression. The grief was still there, but now there was steel underneath it. Anger, betrayal. But if what you're saying is true, Katherine said, her voice going quiet and dangerous. If Thomas Wright is alive, if he survived that crash and started a new life and had a son and never told anyone, never told me, then he let me think he was dead. He let me grieve. He let me carry that guilt for 12 years. He let me believe I'd driven him to his death. And I need to understand why. I need to see him. I need him to look me in the eye and tell me why he did this. I don't understand, Micah said. His voice sounded small and lost. My dad never mentioned you, never mentioned any of this. He doesn't talk about his past at all. Whenever I ask, he just says the past is the past and changes the subject. When were you born? The question came sharp and sudden, like a knife. March 15th. Why does that? What year? Micah told her. Katherine's eyes went distant as she did rapid mental calculations. Her lips moved silently, counting backward. Then her expression shifted through confusion, realization, and something that looked like betrayal had a baby with rage. March, she said slowly. You're 12, born in March, which means you were conceived in June, July at the latest. I don't understand what that has to do with Thomas disappeared in late November, Katherine interrupted, her voice getting sharper. 12 years ago. The crash that supposedly killed him happened on November 28th. If you were born the following March, that means he was alive that December. That January, that means within weeks of letting me think he was dead, he started a new life, met someone else, had a child. The hurt in her voice was a living thing. Micah could feel it pressing against him, making it hard to breathe. I don't know anything about that, Micah said quietly. All I know is my dad works hard and loves me, and right now he's dying, because we can't afford the medical care he needs. And I came here to sell things I made with my own hands, things he taught me to make because I'm trying to save his life. And instead I find his portrait in your house, and you're telling me things about his past that he never told me, and I don't understand any of this. I don't understand anything anymore. Katherine seemed to come back to herself. She looked at Micah, really looked at him, and something in her expression softened just slightly. Your father is dying. The doctors at the free clinic say it's his lungs, pneumonia maybe, or something worse. They say he needs real tests, X-rays and CT scans and blood work. $3,000 worth of tests. Micah's voice cracked, and he hated himself for it. We've been saving for months, but we only have $400. We'll never have enough, and every day he gets worse. This morning he collapsed in the garage. He couldn't breathe. He turned blue, and I thought he couldn't finish. The fear he'd been carrying all day crashed over him, and suddenly he was crying, standing in this billionaire's mansion with tears streaming down his face, his shoulders shaking. Katherine was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled her phone from her pocket with sudden decision. I'm calling my driver, she said, her voice sharp and commanding now. We're going to your house, right now. What? No, I can't just… Micah. Katherine looked at him, and there was steel in her gaze. Fire. If the man you're calling your father is really Thomas Wright, if he's really alive after 12 years of me thinking he was dead, then I need to see him with my own eyes. I need to hear the truth from his mouth, and if he's as sick as you say he is, he needs medical help that you clearly cannot afford to give him. So we are going to your house, we are going to get answers, and then we are going to figure out how to save his life. Do you understand? Micah wanted to argue, wanted to protect his father from whatever storm was about to hit. But Katherine was right about one thing. His father needed help, real help, and if this woman could provide it… Okay, he whispered. Okay. Katherine made the call. Her voice was crisp, professional, leaving no room for argument. Bring the car around. We're leaving immediately. Less than 2 minutes later, a sleek black car pulled smoothly to the mansion's entrance. A driver in a pressed suit stepped out and opened the back door without a word. Katherine gestured for Micah to get in. He climbed into the back seat, sinking into leather so soft it felt like sitting on a cloud. The car smelled like new leather and expensive perfume, so different from his father's truck that rattled and smelled like motor oil and sawdust. Katherine slid in beside him and looked at the driver. We need to go to Elm Street. The driver's eyebrows rose slightly, just a fraction, but enough for Micah to notice. Elm Street, ma'am? I know where it is, Katherine said sharply. 342 Elm Street. Take us there now. Yes, ma'am. As the car pulled smoothly away from the mansion, heading down the private lane toward the main road, Micah stared out the tinted window and tried to process what had just happened. He'd gone to that mansion to sell wooden items, to make money for his father's medical bills. And somehow, in the span of 30 minutes, he'd stumbled into a secret his father had been keeping for Micah's entire life. A secret involving a billionaire, a faked death, a past his father had buried so deep that Micah never even knew to look for it. Micah pulled out his phone and tried calling home. It rang 4 times, then clicked to voicemail, his father's voice, rough and tired. This is Thomas. Can't get to the phone. Leave a message. Dad, Micah said, hearing the shake in his own voice. Dad, please call me back. It's really important. It's about your past. Please pick up. Please. He ended the call, tried again, voicemail again. Beside him, Katherine sat rigid and still, her hands clasped so tightly in her lap that her knuckles had gone white. She stared straight ahead through the windshield, her jaw clenched, her breathing carefully controlled like she was holding something back by sheer force of will. The drive took 38 minutes. Micah watched the city transform outside the window, luxury giving way to comfort, comfort giving way to working class giving way to barely getting by. By the time they reached Elm Street with its chain-link fences and cars on blocks and houses that leaned slightly, the contrast was impossible to ignore. The driver pulled up in front of 342, a small ranch house with siding that had faded from white to dingy grey. The lawn hadn't been mowed in weeks. The mailbox tilted at a 45-degree angle. One of the front windows had a crack sealed with duct tape in a starburst pattern. Katherine stared at the house. Her expression was unreadable. "This is where you live?" "Yes, ma'am." "And Thomas, your father, he's inside?" "Should be. He doesn't go out anymore. Too tired." Katherine opened her door before the driver could get out to do it for her. She stood on the cracked sidewalk in her designer jeans and expensive shoes, looking at the modest house like it was something from another planet. Micah climbed out and walked up the concrete path, cracked and broken, weeds growing through every gap. He pulled his keys from his pocket, but his hands were shaking so badly he couldn't get the key in the lock. Katherine waited behind him, silent, tense as a drawn bowstring. Finally, Micah got the door open. He stepped inside, Katherine following close behind. "Dad?" Micah called out. "Dad, are you home?" Silence. The TV was off. The house had that heavy, empty quality that made Micah's stomach clench with worry. "Dad?" He moved through the small living room, thrift store furniture, walls that desperately needed paint, carpet worn thin along the main pathways, moved down the short hallway toward the two bedrooms. His father's door was closed. Micah pushed it open slowly. Thomas Wright lay on top of the bed covers, fully dressed in work clothes that hung loose on his frame. One arm was flung over his eyes. His breathing was audible even from the doorway, labored, rattling, wrong in a way that made Micah's chest tight with fear. "Dad?" Micah moved to the bedside, his hand gentle on his father's shoulder. "Dad, wake up. I need you to wake up." Thomas stirred. His arm dropped away from his face. His eyes opened, glassy with fever, unfocused, struggling to see through whatever exhaustion or illness had him in its grip. "Micah?" His voice was barely a whisper. "What time is it? I thought you were selling." "Dad, I need you to sit up. There's someone here who—" But Thomas's eyes had moved past Micah to the figure standing frozen in the bedroom doorway. For a second, maybe two, there was no recognition, just confusion at seeing a stranger in his home. Then his brain caught up with what his eyes were seeing, and Micah watched his father's face drain of every drop of color. "No." The word came out strangled, terrified. "No, Katherine, you can't be here. This isn't possible. You can't." He tried to sit up, but the movement triggered a coughing fit so violent his entire body convulsed. Micah grabbed the water glass from the nightstand with shaking hands, tried to help his father drink, but Thomas couldn't stop coughing, couldn't catch his breath. Each cough sounded like something tearing inside his chest. Katherine stood frozen in the doorway, one hand pressed over her mouth, tears already streaming down her face. "Thomas," she said, and the name came out broken, shattered. "Thomas, you're alive. You're actually really alive." Thomas finally managed to stop coughing. He was gasping now, each breath sounding painful and wrong. He looked at Katherine with an expression Micah had never seen on his father's face before. Terror, guilt, grief, all tangled together. "Katherine," Thomas said, his voice barely audible. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. You were never supposed to find me. You were supposed to forget about me. Move on. Be happy. You were never—" Another coughing fit cut him off. This one was worse. Micah watched in horror as his father's lips started turning blue. "We need to call 911, Katherine said, her voice suddenly sharp with command. She already had her phone out. "He needs a hospital, now." "No hospitals," Thomas gasped out between coughs. "Can't. They'll ask questions about identity, insurance, about identity." About identity. Katherine's voice cut through the room like a whip. "Thomas, what are you talking about? What have you been hiding from?" Thomas's eyes met hers, and in that moment, Micah saw something pass between them. A communication built on years of history he didn't understand. "Your mother," Thomas whispered, and the two words seemed to take everything he had. "Patricia. She didn't just want me gone, Katherine. She wanted me dead." Katherine's face went from shock to disbelief. "What? No. My mother was controlling, manipulative. But she wouldn't. She sent men," Thomas interrupted, then dissolved into another coughing fit. When he could speak again, his voice was even weaker. "2 days after our fight, 2 men came to my apartment. Said they worked for Patricia, said she'd decided I was too much of a liability, too much of a threat to your future. They gave me a choice: disappear permanently, or they'd make me disappear. They showed me photos, Katherine, photos of you leaving campus, photos of Sarah, Micah's mother, going to her waitressing job. They said if I didn't vanish, accidents would happen, to me, to anyone I cared about." Katherine stumbled backward like she'd been physically hit. Her back hit the doorframe and she sagged against it. "No," she whispered. "No, my mother wouldn't. She was cruel, yes, but murder." They were very convincing. Thomas's breathing was getting more labored. "Showed me news clippings of accidents that had happened to other people who'd gotten in your mother's way. Business competitors who'd died in car crashes. A journalist who'd been writing about her company's shady deals, found dead from an apparent suicide. They said I had 48 hours to make my choice." He looked at Micah, and his eyes filled with tears. "So I staged the crash," Thomas continued, "drove my truck to Miller's Ravine, made it look like I'd lost control, left my wallet, my ID, everything in the truck and set it on fire. Hiked out through the woods, started over with a new identity. I thought," his voice broke, "I thought I was protecting you, Katherine, protecting everyone. By letting me think you were dead." Katherine's voice was rising, edged with hysteria. "By letting me blame myself for 12 years. By making me believe our fight drove you to suicide. I didn't know what else to do." Thomas tried to sit up further, but his body wouldn't cooperate. "Your mother had connections, money, power. I was nobody. A construction worker with a college degree I couldn't afford to finish. If I'd gone to the police, who would they have believed? The billionaire tech mogul or the poor kid trying to marry up? So you just gave up?" Katherine was crying now, her mascara running in black streaks down her face. "You just walked away from everything. From me. From us. I gave up to keep you alive." Thomas's shout turned into violent coughing. Blood flecked his lips. "Don't you understand? They would have killed you to hurt me, would have made it look like an accident. Your mother was insane, Katherine, obsessed with controlling every aspect of your life, and I loved you too much to let you die because of me." The room fell into terrible silence except for Thomas's labored breathing. Micah stood between them, his world tilting on its axis. His father, the man who'd raised him alone, who'd worked himself to exhaustion, who'd taught him woodworking and how to throw a baseball and how to be kind even when life was cruel, had been living a lie for Micah's entire life. "What about my mother?" Micah asked quietly. "Sarah. You said her name was Sarah." Thomas's eyes found his son's face, and the guilt there was crushing. "I met her 6 months after I disappeared," Thomas said softly. "I was working construction under a false name in a town 3 hours from here. She was waitressing at a diner where I ate lunch. She was kind, lonely. We started talking. She knew I had secrets, I couldn't hide that. But she never pushed. We weren't in love, not the way Katherine and I were, but we cared for each other. We were both alone and scared and trying to survive." He took a shaking breath. "When she got pregnant with you, I was terrified. How could I be a father when I didn't even legally exist? But Sarah was happy. For the first time since I'd disappeared, someone was happy because of me, not despite me. We made plans. Small plans. Nothing grand, just a life, together." Thomas's voice cracked, but Sarah had a weak heart, congenital defect she'd never gotten treated because she couldn't afford it. The pregnancy put too much strain on her system. She went into labor 6 weeks early. There were complications. Hemorrhaging, cardiac arrest. The doctors did everything they could, but he couldn't finish, didn't need to. She died 3 hours after you were born, Thomas whispered, looking at Micah. Held you once. Told me to name you Micah because it means who is like God. A reminder that miracles happen even in darkness. Then she closed her eyes and never opened them again. Micah felt like he couldn't breathe. All these years, he'd believed his mother died because of him, because giving birth to him had killed her. And now he was learning it was true, but in a different way. Learning his father had been running from threats, learning nothing about his life was what he'd thought it was. So you raised him alone, Katherine said. Her voice had gone flat, emotionless. Under a false identity, in poverty, working jobs that paid under the table because you couldn't risk background checks, watching him grow up without proper healthcare or opportunities, or any of the things you could have given him if I'd just what? Thomas demanded, finding strength from somewhere. Gone back? Told the truth? Katherine, your mother was still alive until 10 years ago. Do you really think she would have just let me waltz back into your life? She would have destroyed me, destroyed Micah. I did what I had to do to keep my son safe. My mother died 10 years ago, Katherine said slowly, dangerously. 10 years, Thomas. Why didn't you come back then? Why didn't you tell me the truth? Thomas looked away. By then, you'd moved on. You'd built an empire. You were on magazine covers and news programs, this brilliant tech CEO who'd revolutionized the industry. What was I supposed to do? Show up and say, hey, remember me? The dead boyfriend? Surprise, I'm alive and poor and sick and I have a kid. You didn't need that burden. That wasn't your choice to make, Katherine's voice cracked with fury. You don't get to decide what burdens I can carry. You don't get to play martyr and make choices about my life without asking me. I was protecting you. You were being a coward. The word hung in the air like a slap. Thomas flinched as if she'd actually hit him. His breathing got even more labored. Micah saw his father's hand move to his chest, pressing hard like he could physically hold himself together. Maybe you're right, Thomas said quietly. Maybe I was a coward. Maybe I should have fought harder, should have gone to the police, should have found a way, but I didn't. I made my choices and I've lived with them. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for the pain I caused you. He looked at Micah and his eyes were pleading. But I'm not sorry I had you, son. Whatever mistakes I made, whatever lies I lived, you were the one thing I got right. The one thing I'm proud of. You deserved better than the life I gave you, but I did the best I could with what I had. Dad, Micah's voice broke. He didn't know what to say. Didn't know how to process any of this. Another coughing fit seized Thomas. This one was the worst yet. His whole body convulsed. Blood sprayed from his mouth, spattering the worn bedsheet. His lips were blue now, his fingernails too. He was drowning in his own failing lungs. That's it, Katherine said, her voice sharp with decision. She already had her phone out, was dialing. I don't care about false identities or hiding or any of it. He's dying. We're getting him help. Now. 911. What's your emergency? I need an ambulance at 342 Elm Street, Katherine said, her voice crisp and commanding, despite the tears still streaming down her face. Male, late 30s, severe respiratory distress. Possible pneumonia, possible pulmonary edema. He's cyanotic and coughing up blood. We need emergency transport immediately. Ma'am, is the patient conscious? Katherine looked at Thomas, who was still coughing, still struggling to breathe, but nodded weakly. Yes, but barely. Please hurry. Ambulance is on the way. ETA 7 minutes. Stay on the line with me. Katherine put the phone on speaker and set it on the nightstand. She moved to Thomas's other side, opposite Micah, and helped prop him up into a more upright position. The movement triggered another coughing fit. Breathe slowly, Katherine instructed, her voice gentle now. Professional. Slow breaths, in through your nose, out through your mouth. That's it. Micah watched these two people, his father and this woman from his father's past, work together to keep Thomas breathing. Katherine's hand on his father's back, rubbing slow circles. Thomas leaning into her touch, like muscle memory, like his body remembered her even if 12 years had passed. Katherine, Thomas gasped between labored breaths. Don't, Katherine interrupted sharply. Don't you dare. You don't get to die on me. Not now. Not after I just found out you've been alive all this time. But if I do, Thomas insisted. Promise me. Promise me you'll take care of Micah. He's got no one else. No grandparents, no family. Just me. If I'm gone—" "Stop it," Micah said, his voice fierce. "Stop talking like you're dying. You're going to be fine. The doctors are going to fix you, and you're going to be fine." But even as he said it, Micah could see his father's skin was grey, could hear the awful rattling in his chest, could see the way Thomas's eyes were starting to lose focus. "Promise me," Thomas repeated, looking at Katherine with desperate intensity. "Please, whatever I did, whatever pain I caused, don't punish him for my mistakes. He's a good kid, smart, kind, talented. He deserves a chance. Please." Katherine's jaw clenched. Tears were flowing freely now, but her voice was steady. "I promise," she said, "but you're going to be fine. You're going to survive this, and then we're going to have a very long, very loud conversation about every stupid, noble, idiotic choice you've made. Understood?" Thomas managed a weak smile, looking forward to it. Sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. Micah ran to the front door and threw it open. Red and white lights were flashing down the street, the ambulance racing toward them. The EMTs burst through the door 30 seconds later. 2 men and a woman, all moving with practiced efficiency. They took one look at Thomas and immediately went to work. Oxygen mask, IV line. Questions rapid fire at Katherine since Thomas was too weak to answer. How long has he been like this? The severe respiratory distress started about 15 minutes ago, but he's been sick for months. Any diagnosed conditions? Suspected pneumonia, no official diagnosis. He hasn't been able to afford proper medical care. Allergies to medications? Unknown. They loaded Thomas onto a stretcher, strapping him down, hooking up portable monitors. His oxygen saturation was dangerously low. The EMT's face when she saw the number told Micah everything he needed to know. "We're taking him to St. Catherine's," the lead EMT said. "It's the closest trauma center with a pulmonary specialist on call. Are you family?" "I'm his son," Micah said immediately. The EMT looked at Katherine. "And you?" Katherine hesitated for only a fraction of a second. "I'm his fiancée." The lie came so smoothly, Micah almost believed it. The EMT nodded. "One of you can ride with us. The other will need to follow." "I'll ride with him," Micah said. There was no question, no negotiation. "I'll follow in my car," Katherine said. She looked at Micah. "I'll be right behind you, I promise." They loaded Thomas into the ambulance. Micah climbed in beside him, taking his father's hand. The doors slammed shut, and the ambulance lurched into motion, sirens wailing. Through the small window, Micah could see Katherine running to her car, her phone already at her ear, making calls, pulling strings, doing whatever billionaires did when they needed miracles. Thomas's hand squeezed Micah's weakly, his eyes opened just a crack. "Love you, kiddo," he whispered through the oxygen mask. "Whatever happens. Love you." "Love you too, Dad," Micah said, his voice breaking. "Don't you dare leave me. Don't you dare." The ambulance raced through red lights, the sirens clearing a path. The EMTs worked frantically, adjusting oxygen levels, starting medication through the IV, calling ahead to the hospital with vitals and information. Micah held his father's hand and prayed harder than he'd ever prayed in his life. "Please, God, please don't take him from me. Not now. Not like this. Please." The hospital appeared ahead, a massive building lit up against the darkening sky. The ambulance swung into the emergency bay, barely stopping before the doors flew open. Male, 38 years old, severe respiratory distress. The EMT was shouting to the team of doctors and nurses who appeared. O2 sat at 72%, coughing up blood, suspected pneumonia with possible sepsis. "He's crashing." They wheeled Thomas through automatic doors that said emergency, authorized personnel only. Micah tried to follow, but a nurse gently but firmly held him back. "You need to stay in the waiting room, sweetheart. Let the doctors work." "But that's my dad." "I know, and they're going to do everything they can to help him, but you need to let them work." "Okay?" Micah nodded numbly. He watched them wheel his father through another set of doors, watched those doors swing shut, watched his father disappear from view. And then he was alone in a sterile emergency room waiting area, surrounded by strangers, his hands still shaking, his father's blood still on his shirt. 5 minutes later, Katherine burst through the main entrance. Her hair was disheveled from running. Her expensive sweater was wrinkled. Her makeup was completely ruined. She looked nothing like the polished billionaire who'd opened her gate an hour ago. She saw Micah and crossed the waiting room in 3 long strides, pulling him into a hug so tight he could barely breathe. "He's going to be okay," she said fiercely. "I've already called the head of pulmonary medicine. She's on her way. The best respiratory specialist on the West Coast. Your father is going to get the best care available. He's going to survive this." Micah let himself be held, let himself believe her. Because the alternative, the possibility that his father might die, that Micah might be alone, was too terrible to consider. They stood there in the harsh fluorescent lights of the emergency waiting room, holding each other up, 2 people who'd been strangers an hour ago but were now bound together by love for the same dying man. Behind them, through the doors marked emergency, authorized personnel only, doctors fought to save Thomas Wright's life. And somewhere in the city, in a mansion on Ashford Lane, a portrait hung on the wall, a portrait of a man who died 12 years ago. Except he hadn't died, he'd just been hiding. And now, finally, all the secrets were coming out into the light. "Okay, family, I need you to breathe for a second, because that was intense." A boy selling hand-carved wood just uncovered a 12-year-old lie that involves fake deaths, criminal threats, and a mother who was willing to kill to control her daughter's life. But here's what we still don't know. Will Thomas survive? What else has he been hiding? And what's going to happen when he wakes up and has to face the woman he let mourn him for 12 years? Before we go to part 2, I need you to engage. Hit that like button right now if this story has you on the edge of your seat. Drop a comment telling me, do you think Thomas was right to fake his death? Or was Katherine right that he was being a coward? I want to hear your opinions. And if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you doing? Click that subscribe button because part 2 is going to reveal truths that will change everything. The secrets are out, the past has caught up, and nothing will ever be the same.